Welcome to another episode of Buy Low Fantasy Sports with Mitch and Bam. I'm Mitch, and he's Bam. Bam, say hello to the people.
Hello, everyone.
I love it, man. So today, I just finished the draft, and Bam and I wanted to walk through and do a draft recap, kind of get a feel for some of the value we talked about in our last episode, and kind of show you what my draft strategy was as I approached this draft. Now, to give you a basic idea, this is a full point PPR league, and there's 12 men in it. It's actually a pretty competitive league. Everybody seemed to know what they were doing for the most part. So, just wanted to give y'all a little bit of history on what was happening here.
And we get to make fun of you for the bad picks you make. So doubly good.
That's right. So, just kind of wanted to give y'all uh, a little bit of a pre-warning. I did make a couple reaches here, and so it's being, of course, managed through ESPN. And so, of course, Bam's going to poke fun at me a little later on for the reaches I did make. So I want to talk, first of all, real quick on some of the value picks that I felt like I made. Some of my draft strategy as I walked through this was I wanted to grab the best player available no matter what other people did in the draft. I built out my draft board according to my own rankings. So there are some places you may see me that you think is a reach, but if you look at and listen to some of the way that I came to make the picks I did, I think it'll make a little more sense. So I want to start off talking about what happened in round one. In round one, there were some guys that went a little bit higher than I had them, which is kind of okay because of the fact that it is a full point PPR. You see guys off the board like Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Julio Jones, and Travis Kelce that really kind of caught me off guard. Bam, is there anybody in that first round that pops out to you that really would have caught you off guard if you were drafting here?
Kelsey, I don't know why he's going in the first round there. That's weird. And Devontae, DeAndre Hopkins, and Julio when there's running backs there, because even in a full PPR, there's still value with running backs because a lot of those guys catch passes. So I don't know. I would take a wide receiver there in the first round when there's running back scarcity.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think a lot of people's draft strategy changes in a full point PPR versus a standard or half point. So I think that's why I saw a lot of those reaches. That's the only kind of conclusion I could come to.
Yeah, they were using ESPN's rankings instead of thinking for themselves.
Right. Now, I went Gurley in the first round. I'm frozen toes here. Uh, I joined this league the week that all the Antonio Brown news came out about the frostbite on the feet. So I went ahead and made my name Frozen Toes. So, but yeah, I went Todd Gurley. If you listen to our
You're
video,
a, you're a clever lad. You're a clever lad with that name. Yeah.
nice. I wanted to go Antonio Brown. I just couldn't justify the value that he requires. So, but with all of the news, him holding out because of the helmet issue, the fact he hasn't practiced at all with his new team, of course, having Derek Carr at quarterback. So I couldn't justify grabbing him in the second round. But just because of my team name, I did want to I did want to grab him, but I wasn't making that reach. So I went Todd Gurley, and if you listen to our first show from last night,
Our pilot.
our pilot, that's right, uh, Mr. Todd Gurley, I had very high, and so I went ahead and grabbed Gurley in the first round.
Well, the reason we were still high on him, you specifically, was you made a pretty good case about how even if he only gets 75% of the workload he got last year, that's still an RB1 season. So definitely not a top 10 pick, but end of the first round, it's completely justifiable, especially when everybody wants to draft his backup or some of his backups for some reason.
Yeah, and of course, I have him above Le'Veon Bell. I have him ahead of David Johnson. So those are two guys that went ahead of him. That again, I just from some of the mocks I've done in this past couple weeks, I've seen that I've identified that DJ, Lev Bell, those guys are going there. I don't like them, so I'm hoping that people pick Lev Bell, DJ, and then some of these wide receivers ahead of me, so that does open up the Todd Gurley pick. So moving on to round 2, I went with Nick Chubb, second overall. One guy that really caught me off guard is this one, Melvin Gordon. I figured he
Yeah.
would slide
Why?
on into
Why?
the third round
Why?
because of the
Why would
whole
you take him there?
holdout situation. Yeah, it's confusing to me. And actually, this guy, Team Zeichner, he was auto draft the first couple rounds. I guess he had some issues getting into the draft, so uh, I guess ESPN ranking still has him at number 13 overall. So
Thanks, ESPN.
yeah, right. No doubt. Again, like I said, Zeichner went Michael Thomas in the first round. Of course, auto draft had him. So those are two good players. If they pan out and do as well as some of the experts project, those are okay picks. But I don't like Melvin Gordon because of the whole holdout situation.
Well,
Now,
Chubb's in a good spot there because he's got that backfield to himself for at least 10 weeks. They
yeah,
traded away Duke Johnson. Chubb is in a good spot because the whole world is hyping the Browns passing game. And they kind of forget that last year Kitchens was pretty run heavy and used Chubb a lot. So I think specifically that Chubb's in a good spot here and could push for 20, 25 touches every week until Hunt comes back and gives you some options as far as trades goes if he blows up early in the season.
yeah, Freddie Kitchens is a high running back usage coach. And so that allows Chubb to get those 20 25 touches. And without Duke Johnson, yeah, he's going to get the passing game work too. I love the Chubb pick here. Odell Beckham, I'm not high on. James Conner, I'm really not high on Juju. We'll talk about Juju in our next show, most likely. But there's nobody else that really stands out to me in the second round. Kittle does a little bit, just based on the fact that I'm not reaching for a tight end in the first or second round,
Yeah,
and
it's goofy.
we have two taken off the board already here. So that's just kind of my quick rundown of the second round. All right, round 3 it is. Do-do-do-do. So again, round 3 started out. We had Zach Ertz go round 3, pick 1. Again, I think this is a reach pick. I don't like tight ends this early. If you're getting Kelsey in the third round, obviously that's a steal. Go for it. But Zach Ertz, 3-1, I don't like it.
No, it's not playing into value because it's running back is just so valuable. You got to get running back those first 3 picks or at least 2 running back and 1 wide receiver.
Agreed. I saw a lot of reaches in the third round. A lot of reaches that I didn't like. Damian Williams, don't like because of the whole Andy Reid coming out and mentioning that he wants to do a running back by committee. I don't like the Josh Jacobs pick. Not in the third round. I wouldn't have minded it later on, fourth, fifth round. But the third round, I think Josh Jacobs is a little high here. Oakland does not have a good offensive line. They're not a good run blocking team. They're not a good offense, period. And so I don't like the Josh Jacobs pick here.
No, and another one that stands out is Leonard Fournette and Amari Cooper there. These are 2 guys with Fournette has a lot of injury issues historically. Amari's already got a ligament problem in his ankle or foot. So I don't know why you would take those guys in the third round there. Let somebody else make those mistakes. And then you got Marlon Mack there at pick 10 in round 3. You don't know what's going to happen with luck. And we talked about Marlon Mack before, where the key to him is those big pop games. And he has those pop games when the Colts win by 14 or more points. And it's hard to see them with those big wins with no Andrew Luck. So it's just a big speculation there. Probably would have went somewhere else instead of Mack, Cooper, or Fournette there. I would have tried to get a little better value.
Sticking with the Colts theme, T.Y. Hilton seems a little high to me there with the uncertainty surrounding Andrew Luck. You got Jacoby Brisket throwing him the ball.
Yeah, Brisket.
Yeah. So I don't like the Hilton pick there with all the uncertainty surrounding Andrew Luck.
Yeah, this looks like a big reach round. I do like Kerryon Johnson there in round 3. I think that's a good spot for him.
Yeah,
Devonta Freeman is a good spot.
Kerryon Johnson and Chris Carson. I like both of those. Chris Carson, of
And
course, was my pick. So just to give you all a little insight, this league we go 2 running backs and 2 flex spots. So I went ahead and took Chris Carson. I saw him as the highest value in the third round just because of the fact that Pete Carroll came out and said that they want to feature Carson more. They're built to run the offensive line. The Seahawks they're built to run the ball. And so Chris Carson is a value pick there, especially with them saying that he's going to see some of the third down work. So I really like Chris Carson in a PPR league. I like him in a standard too, but I especially like him in a PPR league because of the fact that he's getting that third down work too.
And incidentally, they're trying to feature him more in the passing game. So that gives even more value, especially in a PPR. So even if he doesn't get 20 carries, he could get 15 carries and 5 targets. That's pretty good volume and makes him a good value right here. And then at the bottom of round 3, I noticed Adam Thielen in a full PPR in round 3. That's a pretty good pick there too.
Yeah, I like Julian Edelman as well for the same reason. I think Edelman is going to be featured in that New England offense, just the same way he has been for the past couple of years. And so he may be a guy that gets 120, 130 receptions and a full point PPR. That's 120, 130 points right off the top. So I like the Edelman and Thielen picks for that reason. Moving on to round 4, I selected Aaron Jones in the second pick. Again, like I said, we play 2 flex spots as well as 2 running backs. So I have loaded up in the first 4 rounds with 4 running backs that I see high potential in going into this.
Smart.
Again, this is a round where I saw a lot of reaches, guys that I don't love. The one that immediately stands out to me is Mark Ingram. I'm not in love with Mark Ingram, so I let him slide on down the board, and he got gobbled up in the 4th round. It feels like a reach grab here because I think his ADP overall is 5th round, and especially in a PPR where that running style running back doesn't give you the same amount of points. I really like the Kenny Galladay and the Tyler Lockett picks in this round, and I am okay with the James White selection there at the end of the round. At first, I looked at it and said, ooh, that's a reach. But then I thought James White, of course, his role in that Patriots offense, he's going to be the pass catcher out of the backfield. We're not really sure what their wide receiver situation is going to look like. So I think James White is going to end up with a heavy workload in passing situations during the first half of the season while they've kind of eased those rookie wide receivers into their offense.
As a rule, James White is kind of a guy like Mac that you have to use him in certain uh, situations where there's guys injured or they're playing real far from behind. Those are the times to use James White. But you're right, he does have extra value in a PPR league. Another guy that stands out as a reach here is Derrick Henry. He's hurt. He's not a guy that catches a lot of balls. And if you were a person last year who rostered Derrick Henry before he broke out in week 14, you were an unhappy person. So I don't get why you're drafting him here in the 4th round. And then looking at Patrick Mahomes there in the 4th, I think that's pretty good value there because you're going to get the QB1 overall. And he's been going in the 2nd and 3rd rounds in a lot of mocks. So I think that's pretty decent value there. Probably wouldn't have picked QB myself, but if you're going to pick one, pick the number 1 overall.
Yeah, I tell you, I went back and forth with Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Jones for probably a good minute or so, just because of the fact
Were
that
you talking to yourself?
yes, I was talking to myself. So Patrick Mahomes is the QB1 this year based on what he did last year. I still don't think he puts up quite the numbers he did last year. And you and I have had a disagreement about this all summer long. But I don't think Mahomes puts up the numbers he did last year, but I still think he's far head and shoulders above the rest of the QB field. So I went back and forth on Aaron Jones and Patrick Mahomes there. If A. Jones hadn't have been there, there's a good chance I would be a proud Mahomes owner. And I think Tim Griffin is going to be happy with that pick.
For sure. And I think you did the smart thing by taking the 4 running backs because you got those 2 flexes. So now you're set with running back as far as your starters go. And now you can pay attention to wide receiver in these upcoming rounds. So Speaking of which, what are we doing in round 5?
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did in round 5, round 6. In round 5, of course, we start to see some of those mid-tier wide receivers come off the board. I really like the Cooper Kupp pick at number 4. I really dislike the Tyler Boyd pick at number 3 there. And so there's a lot of guys here that I thought should have slid on down the board, and which allowed me to grab Allen Robinson at the bottom of the round. Allen Robinson's a guy that I'm in love with. I love Mitch Trubisky. He's in his second year in this Nagy offense. And so I think Allen Robinson is going to, the guy I lovingly refer to as A-Rob. I think A-Rob is going to put up quite, not quite wide receiver 1 numbers, but wide receiver 2 numbers. He'll have a couple pop spots throughout the season.
Right. And the thing with Allen Robinson last year, he was beat up a lot. So he was in and out of the lineup. So if he can stay healthy, definitely a guy who could explode in this offense because they did target him quite a bit when he was in. And then with Trubisky there, another year in that offense, I think you're correct on that. Comparatively, you look at what happened with the Bengals wide receivers here in round 5. You're drafting AJ Green in round 5, and he's probably going to be out the first 4 weeks of the season. So that's probably a little too early for him.
And no guarantee that he's going to be fully healthy when he returns in week 5.
Right. And then you look at his teammate, Tyler Boyd, there, and he was a guy that was, when AJ Green went out last year, didn't live up to expectations as the number 1 wide receiver because he scored more points when AJ was in as the number 2. So I don't know why we're going for Tyler Boyd here in the 5th when he's just another guy as the number 1 wide receiver.
One reach I thought that happened was the David Montgomery pick. I I don't foresee David Montgomery having a huge role in that. Let me back up. He'll have a huge role in the Chicago offense. I don't think it's enough to justify a 5th round pick. You have Terry Cohen there. You have Mike Davis there, came over from the Seahawks last year. I think this is going to be a running back by committee, and so I don't see him as a 5th round pick. I love his potential, but I don't know that Chicago's coaching staff is going to turn the keys over to their car to David Montgomery.
Especially when you got the hype train on a guy like Montgomery. He's been shooting up the ADP boards and he's been getting a lot of hype in the fantasy community. So he's not really a value where he's being picked here. When earlier in the summer, when you can get him in the 8th and 9th round, yeah, that's a good value, but not in the 5th. But you look at guy Tevin Coleman there, that's a good value in the 5th because he's a guy that I think could get 200 touches, 1,000 to 1,200 yards, and 10 to 12 TDs in this offense with the 49ers if all the stars align there and Jimmy Garoppolo comes back into form. So that's a pick I like there in round 5.
I think a lot of people are overlooking the San Francisco offense with the Gruffalo back at quarterback. And so, yeah, I agree with you. Tevin Coleman pick there is top notch. Moving on to round 6. This is where I took a huge reach. And I want to explain this.
Oh man.
I'm gonna let you go ahead and get your digs first, but I want to explain why I did it.
Hey, is your shoulder and elbow hurting at all?
No, why?
Because you've been doing a lot of reaching, my friend. A lot of reaching. Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah.
So we were talking, if you listened to our show yesterday, which you can go back and listen to on our YouTube channel, you will see that Mitch here recommended Dede Westbrook at his ADP in the 9th round. Now, unless something happened to number 9 and it got swapped, I flipped upside down. I mean, it looks like you picked him in round 6. So please explain yourself.
Yeah. So just like I mentioned in the show yesterday, Dede Westbrook is a guy to me. I think Dede is going to be wide receiver 10 or better. All right. Coach, I can never say his name. Coach Dilafilipilio comes over from the Vikings. Coach D comes over from the Vikings. This is a guy that wants to feature his slot wide receiver. Look at what he did with Adam Thielen last year. On top of that, they have one quarterback that you may know. His name is Nick Foles, that they signed in the offseason, as well as all of their offensive line returns healthy this year. They had three of their interior linemen that played hurt most of last year, as well as they get their two tackles, Cam Robinson and Josh Wells, coming back from injury. They missed almost all of last season. And so this was an offensive line that played pretty terrible last year. But if you look at the fact that they're missing their two starting tackles, their three interior linemen are playing hurt, it makes sense that they're going to improve drastically. As well as they drafted a guy in the second round who I project to surpass one of those guards in the near future, Jawan Taylor. They drafted him in the second round. And so I think this offensive line is going to be improved. You have a coach that wants to feature the slot. You have a quarterback that wants to feature the slot, right? Coach D and Nick Foles, these guys lay awake at night just salivating over the idea of getting the slot more involved in this offense. And so I think Dede, even though it's a reach pick, I think he still provides value in round 6, just because I have him in my top 10 wide receivers. And of course, with this being a full point PPR, it kind of puts a premium on those pass catchers that we project to get more receptions than, say, a guy, than they did last year. So,
All right, I'll let it slide this time. I think you're good. Well, you were mentioning to me earlier too that this is a 12-man rotation, and you're going to have to wait 23 more picks till you pick again. So it kind of, I can understand it. Probably should have waited it out and got some other value there. But if you're really high on Dede, we talk about value and going to get your guys, so you're not forced to roster some scrubs. I can forgive you this time.
yeah. Another, I appreciate it. Another guy I strongly considered before letting that pick go through, the Dede pick. One guy I considered was Austin Eckler. I really love this pick right here in round 6. If Gordon misses time, of course, you can hear our full breakdown on Eckler in our show from yesterday. But if Eckler steps into that starting role, especially in a PPR league, I think he's huge value here in round 6.
Right. We got Eckler projected for, even with Gordon back, 5 to 10 touches. So it makes sense. He can be a flex guy for you, even if Gordon's in. And if he's out, he becomes a feature guy, which it's good value in the 6th round. There's one guy at the top of the 6th there, Miles Sanders. What's going on with that? He's not even starting. It's a big mess in Philly, and they've always been a committee. Always been a committee. I don't know why you're taking the committee back in round 6 when you can see around him. There's Eckler, there's Josh Gordon, there's a couple guys there you can grab instead of grabbing a backup in a committee that you have no idea how much he's going to play.
I'm not sure what that guy was thinking, but I do not like that pick at all. I also didn't like the little mini run that happened there with tight ends. I know you're high on Hunter Henry. If you want to hear Bam's full breakdown on Hunter Henry, please go back and look at last night's episode. But there was some other tight ends taken in this round that kind of surprised me. OJ Howard, Evan Ingram. Those guys, it really surprised me that they went this early, especially when some of the other value existed. Josh Gordon was another guy that I thought was a huge reach here in round 6. So there was some reaching going on here in round 6 that really, like I said, really surprised me.
And to clarify, when we're talking about a run, that's where one guy picks a tight end, for example, a position or any other position, and then it forces the other players to be reactive. Like, oh, I don't want to miss out on a tight end. So they go and pick the other tight ends, not thinking in terms of value. That's what we mean by a run. And so, yeah, round 6 is probably a good spot for Henry. I know you think he should go later. But then you got OJ and Ingram. OJ is a guy that Bruce Arians doesn't really feature tight ends, never has. And I know the fantasy community is hyping OJ Howard that they're going to figure something out for him. But if we got to go with some historical evidence here, we can't just try to read the tea leaves and project production onto a guy when we know the coach doesn't really feature that position. So he should have went later. And then Evan Ingram's caught up in a god awful offense. You got Eli Manning, the ghost of Eli Manning at quarterback, Golden Tate. They have 15 slot wide receivers. You got Shepard, who's going to move outside now. You got Tate. You got Ingram, who plays in the slot. So I guess they're going to line up with a 3 wide receiver slot formation. I don't know what they're doing. So yeah, a bunch of reaches here in tight end.
Yeah, and one thing that really stuck out to me was here started our quarterback run as well. Deshaun Watson went 12th in this round, round 6. And as we move into round 7, you start to see that take an effect. We start to see that huge quarterback run. You had Baker Mayfield, Aaron Rodgers, Matt Ryan. All 4 of those guys came off the board at the turn of round 6 into round 7. And so, of course, when this quarterback run happens early on, it gives you a little more value as you look at some of these players that are still available. I went Curtis Samuel, also a little bit of a reach. I think most ADPs have him in round 8, but I saw the value there with it being a full point PPR. I loaded up on running backs the first 4 rounds, so now I've got to grab guys that kind of give me some extra value at that wide receiver position. I think Curtis Samuel is one of those guys, and so I went ahead and snatched him up here. What do you think?
Well, I do think we need to schedule you a doctor's appointment to get your shoulder and elbow looked at because, I mean, there's some pretty serious reaching here. I get what you're saying. You need a wide receiver in this round, and you want to go get your guy that you like, but you look probably a little too high for Samuel round 7 when we had him ADP wise going in the 8th or 9th. You could have gotten some better value there, I think.
So Curtis Samuel's a guy, though, that's been raising up people's draft boards. His ADP right now sits at 802 in standard scoring. So if he's at 802, that kind of puts a damper on it, right? If I'm in a PPR at 7-11, I could have waited to 802 and hoped that Team Zeichner didn't grab him right behind me. But I wasn't sure what he was going to do. He's made some kind of strange, kind of off-ball picks throughout the draft already. And so I want to make sure that I'm locking up a guy that I like, and Curtis Samuel just happens to be that guy.
Okay, I'll forgive you again. I'm a big pushover, aren't I?
You are. Yeah.
All right. So round 8, what are we looking at?
So round 8, this is where that you kind of see that quarterback run continue into round 8. We had Cam Newton go. We had Dak Prescott go, which the Cam Newton pick I really do like. And so I thought the Dak pick was a little bit of a reach. Well, I thought it was a lot of bit of a reach. I had him pegged as a 12th or 13th rounder. He's going here in the 8th. But this was a round where it was kind of awkward because there wasn't a lot of value at wide receiver left, but a lot of people still had to grab one. This is where I picked up Austin Hooper. We talked on him last night as well, but I really love Hooper's position here because, like I said, everybody's continuing that wide receiver run of like mid-tier guys. They're continuing that quarterback run of guys that I don't have this high. So I wanted to get the value at my tight end position and go ahead and lock it down. What do you think?
I like it. You went after, while everybody was going wide receiver and quarterback here, you went and grabbed a tight end with decent value there in round 8. Because you look at Emmanuel Sanders going there. I have no idea why. He's not even cleared to play yet. He had an Achilles injury late last year. And from what we've seen over the last few years with guys who have Achilles injuries, there's always a residual or an add-on injury that comes with it. Richard Sherman last year, he tore his Achilles 2 years ago. Last year, he was having all kinds of problems with the opposite leg. You see that all the time with Achilles injuries. So I don't know why they're drafting Emmanuel Sanders here is a guy who probably should be going undrafted. Also, didn't like Christian Kirk there. He had a decent season last year when he was healthy, but new offense, college chuck and duck style offense, and a quarterback you have no idea how he's going to do. I don't know why we're reaching for injured guys and guys in bad offenses in round 8 just to fill a spot. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, one pick I really did like was Deshaun Jackson here at the end of round 8. I had him pegged as a 10th rounder, but in standard scoring, PPR, of course, gives the wide receivers a little bump. You'll probably hear me say that about 15 times more in this show, but I like the Deshaun Jackson pick. He's probably going to catch quite a few deep balls in this Eagles offense. And, of course, he has some familiarity there with Carson Wentz. So I like the D-Jax pick here.
Round 9, what we got?
We have a lot of reaches that happened here. A lot of guys that went again higher than I thought they should have went. There's a few value picks in the 9th round that I really loved. Carson Wentz was a quarterback that I am extremely high on. Bam and I both are. We both have him pegged as a top 5 quarterback this season. I was hoping he would fall one more spot so I could grab him at number 11. He went number 10. I ended up going Jared Goff. Gives me a quarterback 7, quarterback 8 with quarterback 5 upside. And there were a couple picks that really just kind of caught me off guard. The Darrell Henderson pick. You're picking up a guy who's a backup running back that's not even the number 2 backup running back.
Yeah, he's the 3rd stringer. Why are you picking him there? It doesn't make sense. I did like Vance McDonald there. I think he's a guy I've been looking at the last few days. And in the Steelers' second preseason game, the starters ran 14 snaps. He was in on all 14 snaps. So it looks like he's going to be in a full-time starting role after splitting snaps with Jesse James last year. So full-time starting tight end with the team, Ben, who likes to throw to the tight end round 9. It's pretty good value.
Yeah, absolutely. The Shady pick, I kind of understand it. He is a starting running back. I don't love that Buffalo Bills offense, but he is a starting running back. So I guess there's some value to be had. The fact that you're getting a starting running back in the 9th round. David Njoku, he's a guy that was pegged. ADP had him in the 7th round. I don't like Njoku personally, but he is a value pick here because of the fact that his ADP is 7th round, and somebody's grabbing him in the 9th round here.
You don't like Njoku personally. What did he do to you? Well, Njoku, the thing with him is he's got bad hands and he doesn't really run routes well. So he's a guy, unless he's getting you a couple TDs, he's not really doing a whole lot for you. And he's got caught up in that Cleveland Browns hype train. So people assume he's better than he is.
Yeah, exactly. The Delaney Walker, of course, if he can maintain his health throughout the season, he hasn't shown that he can do that over the past couple of years. But Delaney could be a pretty decent tight end. He's a good streaming option at tight end.
Another thing, too, is Mariota targeted him a lot when he was healthy last year when Delaney was in. And then the year before, he targeted Delaney a lot. So as we see this Titans passing game sort of take shape with Adam Humphries, Corey Davis, Delaney Walker, you can kind of see there's a spot for him to get 60 catches in this offense.
Sure. Moving on to round 10, I went ahead and handcuffed my number 2 running back, Nick Chubb. I went ahead and handcuffed him with Kareem Hunt. Not a lot of great picks, I felt like, here in round 10. The Dion Lewis pick, I did like. The Andrew Luck pick, I didn't like. And, of course, you see some of that quarterback run continue after Luck came off the board.
Yeah, it looks like a lot of speculation in this round. You got James Washington and Dante Moncrief being drafted here. We have no idea what Steelers wide receiver 2 situation looks like. If you base it upon the snap count in the preseason, It's Juju and a committee with everyone else. Also, didn't Kiki QT is hurt. Andrew Luck's hurt. Peyton Barber's just a guy. Devin Singletary is caught behind two 35-year-old running backs. So a lot of reaches here, a lot of speculation in this round. Did like Russell Wilson in round 10. He's a guy that definitely return value for you there.
Absolutely. I think Lamar Jackson's a good pick too. I think Lamar Jackson is a guy that could get you points in spurts, right? So he's going to run through uh, several defenses in the first 6 weeks that he could really do some damage with his legs. And of course, running quarterbacks offer that fantasy upside with rushing yards versus passing yards. So Lamar Jackson isn't a bad pick here. I don't love him season long, but there's some spots where he can do some damage for you.
It also goes to show something we hit on earlier is that we got two pretty decent QBs here in round 10. So when you saw back in the 7th and 8th round that quarterback run and wide receiver run, you could have went a different route knowing, all right, there's more value to be had in the later rounds.
Oh,
So
yeah.
just stick to your board. Stick to your board.
Moving on to round 11. Let's see what we had here. So in round 11, I went with another quarterback that I'm extremely high on this year, and that's Mitch Trubisky. We've talked about the Chicago offense a little bit when we were talking about the running back situations. But Mitch Trubisky, and when I was talking about Allen Robinson earlier, I think Mitch Trubisky takes a next step forward in Nagy's offense this year. Second year in the same system. I think Trubisky's a guy that could help somebody win a lot of money this year, and I'm hoping it's me.
Well, fingers crossed, right?
Exactly.
The tag on what you're saying there, you got Anthony Miller earlier in that round, and he's a guy that separated his shoulder 5 times last year, kept playing, so you know he's tough. And even with the 5 separated shoulders, he still caught 7 touchdowns. So you can imagine if he's fully healthy, gets that slot role and starts stealing some targets away from Taylor Gabriel, who's at this point in his career just another guy, he could push 10 to 12 touchdowns for you. So I like Anthony Miller. Geronimo Allison's taken over the slot role in Green Bay. There's some pretty good value there. And also like Jalen Samuels here from the Steelers. Connor was pretty beat up after taking a heavy workload last year. He missed a game or two at the end of last year. And they're talking about manufacturing touches for Jalen Samuels. So he's a guy that could potentially, depending on how the Steelers' touch situation in the backfield works out, some people say Connor's still going to get 80. Some people say he's going to get less. He's a guy that could be some value there, especially if you handcuff him to Connor.
Yeah, and we talked last round about Russell Wilson being great value in round 10. Now, Tyler Lockett went round 5, but somebody else has to line up on the opposite side of the field for him. So I really like the DK Metcalf pick here. It offers some value of a most likely starting wide receiver that maybe doesn't get as much attention earlier on in the year. Of course, Seattle plays a couple games against the Cardinals. They play a couple games against the 49ers. Their defense is a reworked unit overall. I think the Seattle Seahawks will have to throw the ball more this year. It allows Russell Wilson to score more. It allows Tyler Lockett to score more. And, of course, somebody else has to catch the ball. And so I like the Metcalf pick here in round 11. If you're going to speculate on a guy, this is the time to go ahead and grab him, scoop him off the board.
Right. I like it. Keep it moving to round 12.
So in round 12, I went with a guy that I'm really high on at wide receiver this year, and that is Mr. Kenny Stills.
You mean you really reached high on?
Oh, yeah, I really reached. It's only a 15-round draft. I was just filling out my roster with speculative picks here. I figured I didn't want to grab a defense. I don't draft defenses, so I'm not reaching for a defense here. I'm reaching for a guy that I think can really perform well above his draft position, and I think that's Kenny Stills. If you want to hear my full breakdown on Kenny Stills, go ahead and listen to show 1 that we uploaded yesterday. You see some other guys in this round that I really am high on. Tyrell Williams is a guy that I like this year. If Antonio Brown can pull coverage away from his side of the field, I think Tyrell Williams can. He's still got Derek Carr throwing on the ball. It's still not a good Oakland offense, but he's a guy that has some talent that if Derek Carr can throw the ball in his general vicinity, I think he's going to catch it. He's going to have some pop production. It means he's going to produce. At times, he's going to disappear at others. So you just have to pick your spots when you want to play him. And Kill Harry, of course, like we talked about, the Patriots offense is kind of in a state of disarray when we're talking about the wide receiver position. So N'Keal Harry being a first-round pick, Belichick talked really high about him. Of course, Belichick doesn't take first-round wide receivers. So the fact that they drafted this guy in the first round tells me that Belichick really loves his abilities. And so
Still a lot of mouths to feed in New England, though. You got Edelman, you got Josh Gordon, you got Demaryius Thomas, you got N'Keal Harry, and you got this Jacoby kid just blowing up in the preseason. So a lot of mouths to feed in New England.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, just it's kind of a speculative pick. I don't know that I love it, but I can understand it. Rest of the round's pretty standard, round 12 stuff. There's a couple reaches.
I
There's
like Smokey Brown there.
Smoky
I think.
Brown, yeah. It's
Well,
still it's still a
you saw
horror.
what Josh Allen did last year. He was garbage at throwing medium or short passes, horribly inaccurate. But the only two things he did well are really good for fantasy scoring: throwing the deep ball and running. And who's good at catching deep balls? John Smokey Brown. So I think this is a good pick in round 12. It is a little crowded there in the Bills wide receiver core. You got Robert Foster, who was the deep guy last year. You got Zay Jones. They signed Cole Beasley. But I think Smokey Brown is probably going to be their deep guy this year. So I think good speculative ad here. Hopefully he connects with Josh Allen, takes a step forward as a quarterback and starts connecting on some of those balls a little more consistently.
I like the Golden Tate pick a little bit too. If the Giants offense wasn't such dog scat, Golden Tate is a guy that I'm really high on. If they would go ahead and let Eli Manning retire, Golden Tate could take the next step forward. I think Eli needs to go ahead and invest in Domino's or Pizza Hut, one of those. Go ahead and start, competitive business with his older brother.
Yeah, whatever. I don't care about the Giants.
Breeze is also kind of a player of note. ESPN had him really ranked really highly. I think they had him ranked as the number 4 quarterback. So the fact that he slid all the way to the 12th round, nobody reached for him. I think that's good value there. Like I said, in the 12th round, if somebody had drafted him where ESPN had him ranked, like I said, number 4, then I would have laughed at him a little bit. But much like I got laughed at for my DD picks.
Breeze is a guy that got towards the end of the year really dropped off a little bit. He didn't really. He's 40, might be time to let the Breeze thing go, and this will probably be his last season if I had to guess. So this isn't the Breeze of 2009, 2010 where he won everybody fantasy leagues. It's a different Breeze.
Sure, but I mean, if you're grabbing him as your backup quarterback in round 12, I'm not mad at you. Moving on to round 13, we have a guy that I'm really high on that went here that I wanted to reach for, but decided not to, and that's Deebo Samuel. I love this Deebo kid. Deebo! I really love this kid. He's immensely talented. Of course, the San Francisco offense, we've already talked about a little bit. I like Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. So I think if Deebo can lock down that starting role, I think he could have a big season. I went with Adam Humphries. He's a wide receiver out of Tennessee. I think this is a guy that Mariota is already developed chemistry with. He's targeted him 14 times already in this preseason. So just in those 2 games. So Humphries is a guy that I think if he can stay healthy, he could put up big numbers, especially in a PPR league. What do you think?
For sure. And another guy I like is Deshaun Hamilton there from Denver. He's a guy that came on when Emmanuel Sanders got hurt last year. He took over that slot role, really showed something. And Flacco started to connect with the slot more over the last few years as he became the check down kid, as we like to call him. So Deshaun Hamilton's a guy who could in a PPR league around 13, good ad there. And then you can see there's a bunch of defenses being taken here. So Jags defense, not really what it once was. Rams defense, a lot of turnover in the linebacker core, and then Sue's gone. And the Vikings defense, never really great for fantasy purposes. More of a good defense, IRL, real life. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to round 14, I went with just the actual handcuff for my Todd Gurley, which is Malcolm Brown. This is the actual backup for Todd Gurley. I don't know why people keep reaching for the other guy. I can't even remember his name. But no, it's
Henderson.
Yeah. I don't know why people keep reaching for him. He was taken four rounds ahead of where I took Malcolm Brown, who is the actual backup. So just kind of handcuffing my top pick there. I did like the McCole Hardman pick, wide receiver out of Kansas City. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Kansas City. I'm not sure that I want to get to their number 4 wide receiver. I can understand if Sammy Watkins misses some time, you have McCole Hardman stepping in there in that spot. Other than that, you see a couple defenses come off the board. You see your boy Jimmy Garoppolo come off the board here.
Jimmy G.
And so it's just a round of people filling out their rosters.
It's a good round to grab your handcuffs. You know,
Yep.
It's a good. You got Judge Ito Smith there, about to convict OJ. He's looks like he's going to keep the number 2 role in Atlanta. And we talked earlier about Devonta Freeman's injury issues, so he's a good handcuff to have there. It's a good round to get your handcuffs, grab your defenses, whatnot. Go ahead and wrap up this draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to round 15, this was our last round. I actually got disconnected here. I went ahead and took the Colts defense. I got auto drafted. I hadn't drafted a defense yet. The computer decided that I needed to draft a defense, so that's who I got here. Other than that, I like the Preston Williams grab, undrafted rookie out of Miami, plays for the Miami Dolphins. He's really impressed so far in training camp and in the preseason games. And then you have people continuing their handcuffs. You got Alexander Madison, backup for Dalvin Cook, and of course Phillip Rivers, Kirk Cousins, just some kind of speculative quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks, if you will. And so round 15, not a lot of excitement there.
I do like your auto pick there, the Colts D. They're a young defense, really, really improved at the second half of last year after battling injuries. Got a lot of young pass rushers, young linebacker core, young in the secondary. I think this is a team that could step up this year defensively. We'll see, though.
Of course, if they can stay healthy, that's always got to be mentioned, because they did have the highest number of injuries at one point last season. So if they can
their injury report had a second page. That's how bad it was.
Right. Anyways. All right. Well, that wraps up our draft review in the draft that I just finished. We appreciate you tuning in. Go ahead and like and subscribe our page. Check us out on Facebook or Twitter. Buy Low Fantasy Sports, Buy Low FS on Twitter. And make sure you give us a thumbs up, share our content, let your friends know what we're doing here. We appreciate it, and y'all take care. Thanks.
Later.